Drew, I want to start with on the report, the most recent one by NDIS review, what we have heard. There are questions in there which, when you read those questions to be responded upon, they are fairly, chapter one of the strategic understanding. How do you create a scheme and how do you deliver a scheme? And we are 10 years down the line, and the conversations are fairly, not to politely to say that it is fairly basic. And in terms of, from your point of view, because you are in multi-states, and that's a very different portfolio versus in a single state portfolio, what NDIS needs to work on strategically so that there's a short duration, the report is due in October. What should they be focusing on strategically?
Thanks, Dev. That's a really good question. I think the report that the review team put out, I don't think was any surprise to anybody in this room in terms of the things that they had heard. I think they're the things that we hear most days. And I think probably if you were to pick up some themes that might be common that have impacted some of those findings that they're thinking about, I think that the planning that occurs within the agency is probably one of the key areas of focus going forward, because many of the complaints that we hear and many of the feedback points that the review team have heard have been about the outcomes and consequences of that initial planning not being appropriate or tailored enough for the individual. So it's not just getting a formula to say that a person with this particular presentation or this particular disability needs X, Y and Z. There needs to be an understanding of the context that the people are living in, the types of aspirations that they have, as well as what the sort of market dynamics are around that, because it's quite a different proposition to be looking for services in a metro area as it is to a regional area, as it is to a very remote area. And there are many different things to consider in all of that. So I think the planning part of it is the first part. The second is also the recognition, I think, that the scheme has in some ways perpetuated what was already there. And that's not to say that there's been great innovation and great outcomes for many, many people, because I think we all know of many stories ourselves, as well as those that people tell us, where the scheme and the supports that it's made available for individuals has transformed their lives. And so I don't think we want to lose hold of that. But we also need to think about, well, what are the outcomes that the people who are receiving services through the scheme actually want to achieve? And it's about thinking, well, how does the scheme then need to try and incentivise that or provide signals to us as providers and to the community about the things that they value? And I think one of the observations that will be no surprise here is the real focus on capacity building, particularly as it relates to employment, has been a big miss. And we're still a long way behind in terms of that, and so there needs to be a big focus strategically about how does the NDIS foster that culture of capacity building and incremental improvement to getting to some of those outcomes around employment, however that might look. It might not be a job 5 days a week, it might be a job 1 day a week, and what do you need to get to be able to achieve that? It still surprises me, with a world-leading scheme like the NDIS and all of the efforts that we've made, that in Australia the outcomes for people with a disability in the employment market are so poor. It can't be right. And we need to be able to fix that. And I think the challenge for the scheme and for all of us as participants in the scheme will be, how do we do that together? Some of that's going to be try and learn and fail and try and learn again, but there are many good examples of that are going on at the same time. So I do think there is a real focus on making sure that capacity is built and people can economically participate in a way that's important to them, and will be massively beneficial to the communities that they live in as well. And then finally, I think that report and certainly some of the comments that have been made by the lead reviewers have talked about an evidence base for what works. And some of the speakers earlier have talked about active support, which is obviously a model of support which has a great deal of evidence and longitudinal evidence about how effective it can be in some settings. If well supported, I think we will start to see those types of signals coming out of the Commission and other areas. But similarly in the therapy spaces and other places, what is the evidence of the types of interventions that are being provided to get the outcomes that the participants are actually requiring?
Thank you.